Perfection feels safe, but can also be the very thing holding us back. Now, what if the real magic doesn't come from flawless execution, but from embracing the mess and the courage to share that mess before it's perfect? Let's have ourselves a pocket sized pep talk and explore the powerful idea of strategic imperfection, a mindset shift that has fueled innovation from green buildings to game changing organizations.
A Pocket Sized Pep Talk, the podcast that can help energize your business and your life with a quick, inspiring message. Now, here's your host, Rob Jolles.
Today's guest, Jason F. McLennan, a globally recognized leader in architecture and sustainability, is the award-winning founder of the Living Building Challenge and Chief Sustainability Officer at Perkins & Will, with work spanning Fortune 500 companies and top universities, and the author of The Magic of Imperfection. Happy to have you with us, and welcome to the show, Jason.
Thank you, Rob. Great to be here.
Pleasure to have you here. I want to dive right in. And I want to start with you writing about strategic imperfection as a powerful tool. Can you explain, one, what that means, and two, how that differs from basically kind of lowering our standards?
Yeah, absolutely. Because ironically, it's a way to improve our standards over time and get closer to perfection by not trying to, get so close to begin with. So it's a interesting concept. A lot of us are conditioned to be afraid of failure. There's a lot of people that are, very talented, smart people, but they're perfectionists. And so what they end up doing is they hold on to their ideas too long and they end up overcooking it. And I talk about this 3/4 baked secret. The world is full of half-baked ideas. We don't need more of those, but we should be trying to not aim for fully baked, because it's the universe that bakes our ideas. It's getting things out into the market. It's sharing with others. And this book teaches people the strategic ways that you can embrace imperfection and begin to share your ideas, and ironically, get close to perfection and get better at what you do over time and in less time.
That's a mouthful. And by the way, I am so with you on this. When I saw you as a potential guest, I jumped on it because I actually wrote a piece some years ago called The Pursuit of Imperfection. And so you're like a brother of mine. It's a classic instinct versus logic piece for me. Everything that we're about to talk about, you and me, particularly you, is going to be very logical. The problem is, or what we have to recognize is, it's not instinctive. And that's why I love topics like this. So, we're going to dive right into that. Have you ever heard of the phrase, and this is how I kind of came upon it. I heard the phrase, and I think it's biblical, although I couldn't tell you where. We all walk with a limp. Have you ever heard that before?
I haven't, but go on.
And it's somewhere, I think it's biblical, about just the fact that we all have some sort of limp. Nobody is perfect. And if we ever meet somebody who claims to be perfect, one of two things are happening. They're either not telling the truth, or they have no capacity whatsoever to display any kind of empathy for another individual.
That's
so
right.
I love this topic of imperfection. How did you start kind of moving towards this?
Well, ironically, it's through failure that you learn your best lessons. And, I'm an architect, a designer, and author, obviously. And, lessons like this came to me the honest way, the hard way, where you try things and you fail, and then you try to get better. And what I realized early on in my career is that you need to fail faster. You need to not be afraid of failure. You need to actually pay attention to why things don't work and why they do, and use that to get better. And what I quickly realized was that there was a strategic sweet spot of knowing when to get ideas out into the world so that others could mentor you, could give you feedback, could tell you your idea was no good or that it was good, and to keep going. And that's really the idea. And that's what I call this 3/4 baked moment. And that's the magic of imperfection.
Okay, so walk me through that process a little bit. I'm a process guy, former Xerox guy. I don't know homework you did on me, but that means I'm very process oriented. And so I love things that are repeatable and predictable. So is there an actual process of failure? You know what I mean? That I could follow. So I'm not so afraid to fail because I know I'm within process, so to speak.
Well, I do tell people right away to really take an honest assessment of what the cost of failure for anything they're doing even is. So a lot of times we imagine that something we're working on is like of huge consequence, but most of the things that people work on are not life or death. And so once you begin to recognize, well, what are the consequences of failure? You recognize there are a few things that you better really, understand and get right, but most things are not that serious. And so we should like chill out a little bit. After you do that, you need to assess, well, how far can I take an idea or a project before I begin to share with others? And that is where the magic comes in. And it's earlier than what most people think. Again, most people hold on to their ideas, their work, because they're trying to make it perfect. They're trying to improve it enough because they're embarrassed of someone not liking it or their boss not appreciating it. But the truth is that the earlier you can get feedback, the better. But if it's too early, it may
Yeah.
be half baked as an idea. So this is like finding that secret moment, and it is a process that you learn through practice.
Yeah. And it's interesting. To me, I think we're so afraid of failure that, as strange as this sounds, and maybe you're right about this, I think a good failure or two is sort of good for the system, if for no other reason that let's just refer to it as almost a punch in the nose. It's terrifying
Absolutely.
getting punched in the nose till you've been punched a couple times. And then you realize it doesn't feel so good. I got to wipe my nose off, but I'm still here and I'm going to learn from the punch in the nose. But, we spend so much time trying to avoid it that it becomes more and more terrifying.
That's right. And then it's usually too late to do something with any feedback you do get. And that's the trap that people fall into. If you wait right before a deadline, or you wait until you have to get something out and you haven't tested it, you haven't gotten that opportunity to get punched in the face by
Right.
reality early enough, then you're missing out on an opportunity to truly make it better. So it's an interesting dynamic for sure.
Well, yeah, and you say make it better. You write about strategic imperfection actually increasing our agility and confidence. Uh, so, how do we make those quick pivots? I guess my question is, when do we know when to pivot and when do we know when to run for the hills? In other words, I'm an entrepreneur, 33 years. Most of my ideas are damn good, I'm proud to tell you, but a few of them, I could have fought in that burning building forever. It was not going to work. How do I know when to keep fighting and when to let it be?
Well, that's the whole point of getting it out. I mean, failing fast for an entrepreneur is essential. Again, you don't want to sink a ton of money and a ton of time into something that isn't going to play in the market. So you have to find a way to test your ideas. But the idea has to be well formed enough that the market can actually understand what you're trying to do. So that's again why I talk about three-quarter baked versus half baked. So
Right.
when an idea is well formed enough, if you're writing a book, you haven't just written an outline, you've written a few chapters, you've fleshed out enough the idea that an editor could then read it and sort of get the thesis. That's the three-quarter baked moment. But you don't want to write the whole damn book, spend, months of your life and then find out it's a dud. What a waste of time and energy.
Yeah.
So it is this calibration, and failure is a calibration tool, is the way I look at it. And when you calibrate things over time, you get real feedback, you begin to develop an inner compass that's accurate. This is an essential idea in the book that most people have a broken inner compass. You actually started out the conversation in this way to say that sometimes people can't empathize. Well, they also don't judge their own output very well. They either think their shit's really good and it's
Right.
not, or they think, and it's terrible, but most people think their shit's no good. And so they actually are afraid to share because they are sort of demeaning their own potential. And
Yeah.
a healthy inner compass is one where you really learn to calibrate and you know when an idea is good because you have failed 50 times before and you can smell it now. And that allows you to race towards the finish line quicker. So you can get more done in a short amount of time because your calibration is on the money.
Yeah. And I think that's why we need a good team around us. In other words, I
Absolutely.
don't ask just anybody for advice, but I
Yeah,
have certain people that I really trust for advice.
at the
Not to get political, but I remember, what was his name? Russ, um, mm, NBC correspondent. It'll come to me. But there was a guy on NBC, passed away some years ago. He's actually the first guy who came up with red and blue states, but in a
okay.
very harmless way. He had a
Yeah,
little chalkboard, and
uh,
but he would have an opinion, and if my opinion wasn't like his, I'd actually question my opinion. And I have people, and I hope that people are listening, particularly entrepreneurs, that have certain people that they'll go to and trust their voices, because we can't trust just anybody.
well,
But
I always tell people that your mom's maybe not the best, judge of your work.
yeah, 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 that's true. Or sometimes spouses mean well too.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
But
It's perfect.
yeah, books are a classic example of what you're talking about, of that confusion a little bit, because I mentor authors as well. You don't want to see people just keep getting to the more difficult parts of the book, throwing up their hands and saying, yeah, it's not working. You got to grind. You got to grind. And at the same time, at the other side of my mouth, there's certain times where you go, you got to let it go. You got to let it go. And I guess we're coming back to, we have to have people that we can trust, who can, offer opinions.
That's correct. Absolutely.
Yeah. How do you coach people to move past that fear and actually allow for imperfection? Again, we're talking about instinct versus logic. Nobody's arguing with you on this side. As I mentioned, I humbly just wrote a little 500-word piece. I didn't write a book about it, but I know that it is tough for certain people to,
It is.
particularly people who I refer to, and I'm in this club of what I call being OCD-ish.
Yeah.
They
Well,
see quitting as imperfection is quitting, and they don't want to quit.
I
Yeah.
think and I'll tell a little story about this, but the main issue is that people attach themselves to their work too much.
Mm,
So that when their work is, the idea of like the work, whatever it is, not being good, they take it then as a personal affront. Like the work isn't good, therefore I'm not good.
right.
That's a problem because you're not even objectively yourself able to see what's good and not good in your work if you have too much in it. We all want to be passionate about our work and care about our work. So I'm not talking about detaching your passion for something. In fact, you want to be passionate, but you need to separate your sort of ego, your self-value from whatever it is that you're working on, your business or your first book or a design. In architecture school, there's a funny thing that happens in maybe the first year of architecture school, where students will be asked to build a model of a design they're doing. And you can imagine all these young prospective architects building this model and spending hours on it. They're all proud of this thing that they made. And what many architecture professors do is that they will then go and look at the kid's model and then start tearing it apart. And the kids have this reaction like, oh my God, how could you destroy my model? But what the professor is trying to teach is that you can't hold on so tight and think that what you do is so sacred that you can't get feedback. And they're trying to teach you, like, we're taking away parts of the ideas that don't work good. And now we want you to rebuild it. And it's a very powerful lesson in our profession that we go through: detachment, and then assessment, and then trying again.
Yeah. When you put the book together, did an editor try and pull some pieces out of there? Were you able to accept that as well?
Well, I had to walk my own talk, brother.
Yeah.
I sent it, when I sent the manuscript in, I was like, okay, go for it, make it red, make it bleed. And, in some places they did, in other places they liked. But it was a smooth process because, again, I didn't give a shit, like, tell me what do you think isn't good? And they, I had really great copy editors and editors at Baird Kohler publishers, and it was a great collaboration as a result. And so I just worked then to make it better. And we got the whole project done in a short amount of time as a result.
Yeah. I didn't know you were a BK author. I'll treat you with more respect now. Uh, fun fact about Barrett Kohler and me, when I wrote my first book for Barrett Kohler, they sent it out and got some feedback, and it was so vicious. including one that I'll remember that said, "How's this for feedback?" The very first line on the first page. If I wasn't being paid to review this book, I would have stopped right here. I'm nauseous. That's that feedback, that license for feedback needs to be revoked for that particular individual. But I actually made a deal for my second book with Barrett Kohler. I said, I'm only signing this if you do not send it out for feedback from whoever you think is there. So I'm one of the few BKs that did not get, I got feedback from the editors, a few of them, but they didn't send me out just because I had such a bad experience. I knew I have to get over that though. It's sort of
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
you
yeah.
gotta
You
let it
don't.
go. Let it go,
You're good at
Rob.
what you do. You don't need it. You're good at what you do. You don't.
Right. That's thank you for that therapy. I have been dragging that around for 12 years now. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, I've told
yeah,
the story a couple of times. I'm looking at you and telling you that's the last time I'm telling that story. I
yeah,
got to get over that. That doesn't mean, I mean, we're burying the lead, aren't we? We need good feedback.
yeah.
Most people do offer good feedback. Authors, don't worry. Let them give you feedback. Don't listen to Rob. Listen to
No,
Jason
but
on this one.
actually, I think your reaction makes sense too, because one of the things is you need to know when you've been given bad feedback. And so part of the detachment is also because imagine if we always listen to what other people said.
Yeah,
So the other side of this coin is like, I'm not saying you take all feedback.
right,
Some feedback is wrong.
right.
But if you develop this inner compass through getting a lot of feedback over the years, you do begin to tell when someone is just being mean or hurtful, when somebody just doesn't get it. And that might tell you a different set of rules, like, okay, I need to present this differently because they clearly don't get it. But if you know in your heart, that this is the right path because of other feedback or your experience, then you can stay the path and you shrug that shit off then. It's like,
Yeah,
okay, so it's an important distinction as well. It's not accept everything you get. That's not what the book is about. It's
right,
learning how to calibrate. And
right,
by calibration, you move faster to the outcome you need.
right.
Yeah.
I needed to give that whoever gave that feedback, they needed to read your book before they read my book, and embrace whatever imperfections that was annoying them.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. Maybe you should review their book.
That's what I'd love to do. I'd have to control myself. All right,
Yeah.
many listeners are trying to stand out in crowded markets. I write these things called blarticles. So I remember one of them I wrote had to do with trying to remove ourselves from what I call the sea of sameness. So how can embracing imperfection maybe help us build something that's a little bit more authentic, get us out of that sea of sameness?
Yeah. 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 Get us out of the sea of sameness.
Yeah, I don't want to. I want to be out of that sea. I don't want to. I listen. I'm an author too. I occasionally I speak on my books and things. That's a sea of sameness. I do things. I'm trying to do things that are a little bit different. Offer something and draw people to that difference, and that's how I sell.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm trying to figure out how we get people to embrace imperfection and maybe get themselves out of that sea of sameness.
Well, I think one of the things is that, I think if people are honest with themselves, they're probably not spending enough of the time on the things that they love because they're stuck in the drudgery of the things that they feel like they have to do.
Mm,
And wouldn't anyone like to get out of the sea of sameness of their lives to be able to focus on the things that they really care about? And so the part of the ulterior motive of like getting more done is to have time for the things that you actually love to do. And so understanding how to embrace the three-quarter baked secret frees you up to prioritize the things that make a difference either in your work or in your home life. And I think that's an important outcome.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's just your topic is so interesting to me because it's like a wrestling match. There's nothing that doesn't resonate with me. I just, we know the human condition. We know we've been taught to
Yep.
to watch out for it. I'm going to show you something which people with this is called a podcast. They can't see, but you'll be able to see it. It's something I keep on my desk, and it's a
Yep.
stone that says "Never, never quit." I don't have any other stones on the desk. This is it, my only stone. And so that's how baked in this is. And yet, we're saying, yeah, you don't have to quit, but you can accept
Well,
imperfection. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Let me add a couple more because I think there's some other stones that are useful to have as
Hmm.
well. Some of it is don't start certain things. Like don't do certain things. Like to begin with, like never quit once you've started. Okay, but there's a whole bunch of stuff that we start that we should never start. And so assessing whether your project is actually going to make a difference, honestly, whether you should even do the project, whether you're the right person to write the book or whatever it is a first step in this. If we declutter our lives with things that will never be more than half baked, then we free up even more time so that we're focusing on the things that we don't want to quit at. And again, but my definition of not quitting is making sure that we're letting the universe perfect an idea, not thinking that we somehow are so talented that we can create perfection ourselves without feedback from I call it the universe, but anything, the market, whatever. And that's the beautiful thing.
Yeah. Have you ever formally studied problem solving before?
Well, I'd like to think that architects basically are,
Yeah, I'm
problem.
sure you are. But do you follow any type of process?
Well,
You probably do. You
certainly,
let me
yeah,
let me let
yeah,
me let me answer half your question, and you can nod
yeah,
yes or no. I
yeah,
think
yeah.
you might be what we call an unconscious competent. Means you have so much training in that you're not necessarily dictating a formal model, but I'm quite sure that you problem solve intelligently before you start building something.
I'd
Uh,
like to think.
yeah. Yes, I would like to think so too, and I know so. So
Yeah,
I'm coming from more of a theoretical side, where at Xerox I taught problem solving, and
yeah,
and and I think you'll appreciate this. There were many fascinating parts of the process, but one of the first move was not to generate solutions. We barely know what the problem is, but before we even get to the problem, we
that's right.
had to do two things. We had to actually write out what we called an as is. Tell me what this looks like as is. Now, I don't want your opinions. I want facts. What are we
Right.
looking at? And then I want you to tell me what the desired state is. In other words, what should it look like?
Yep.
Okay. And then we begin to just hack away at the problem. They're not getting anywhere near a solution. But I can't tell you how important that was, because I saw many projects, they never even started because we realized there isn't a problem here.
That's right.
When we
Yeah,
really
yeah.
looked at it,
I love
we
that.
didn't need to generate solutions.
I love that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I think sometimes people spend all their time trying to answer the wrong problem too.
right.
They don't take the time up front to say, well, what's the real goal of our client, or what's the real need that I'm trying to solve in the market? And so they spend a lot of time moving in the wrong direction. It's incredibly inefficient. So you're totally right. Like up front, making sure that you're being very clear of what the objective is and what the essence is around the assignment you're trying to solve. And anything that's extraneous, well, solve it later if you have time, but don't begin with it. You see people, like, if you're really left brain, you see people with a sort of analysis paralysis with analysis,
Right.
and they can't even begin because they feel like they need to know anything. And then you also, on the other side, have right brain folks that dive into shit without thinking first, and both is a waste of time.
Yeah.
And it's critical what you're describing.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I got to believe that perfectionists must really struggle here. Are there some common traps that perfectionists fall into that damage or their creativity and productivity?
Yeah, I mean, we probably both know lots of perfectionists that are incredible talents, but they always seem to struggle to live up to their talent. They can't meet deadlines sometimes. They can't get their great work done, again, because they're their own worst enemy. They're overly self-critical. Maybe they have their parents on their shoulder from when they grew up, or that terrible teacher that told them they would never amount to anything, or whatever it is. But show me a perfectionist and I'll show you someone that has problems getting shit done most of the time. And that's so, in many ways, my secret prime audience are people that are perfectionists, because I want them to feel like they have succeeded at what they're doing. I want them to feel good about their work, but they got to get out of their own way. And that's this book, I think, really helps people to embrace imperfection. Oh my God, how scary. And put things out and get the feedback, and knowing that it'll be more perfect when they get feedback than if they just try to solve it all on their own. They try to take too much on typically.
Yeah. Well, I've always been a fan of the phrase "done is perfect." Particularly, yeah, particularly when you're coaching authors, because
Yeah.
now is this your first book, Jason?
No, I have 8 books that I've
All
written.
right, so you're a grizzled vet. So that means you've had through this journey of yours. I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you what's already happened to you, and you're going to nod. I hope. Oh yeah, that it invites conversations from people who are working on books or thinking about writing books, and that's lovely.
Yeah.
But how many times have you bumped into somebody who said, "Oh, I've been working on my book. How long have
Oh
you
yeah.
been working on it? 9 years. Where
Yeah.
are you in the book? I'm on chapter 2. Okay, maybe." Because that perfectionism, they keep, they get tired of it. They're chasing like a new shiny penny, and they
Yeah.
can't get out of that first chapter.
I see the same thing all the time.
Right.
And keep rewriting the first chapter, or sometimes they get up to chapter 3. And I actually tell people, no matter how much you think it's crap, just write and write and write. Get the first draft of the book done. Uh, and then once you have this thing, it's not daunting. Even if it's crap, it's now all out there in some form, and others can begin to read it and review it and give you feedback, and you can then edit it. But don't edit your own work until you've done a complete first draft. Is basically
Love
my.
that. I love that. Yeah, I'd say you ever watch the horse races where they got the blinders on?
Yep. Yep.
That's
Yeah.
you. Like,
Yeah.
what if I tell the same story 3 times? Mazel tov. Tell it a fourth
Yeah.
time. I don't care. Okay.
Okay.
That's what an editor's for. Okay.
Exactly.
Just stay in rhythm. Just keep pushing forward. And, I don't mentor a ton of authors, but when I do, I get books written because I just will not allow them to go back and reread it and begin to make changes. Push forward. Let's get ourselves a manuscript.
I have a thing in my book I call rhythm surfing, which is one of the techniques in the book where,
Hmm.
when you're writing a book and sometimes it's really easy and you're flowing.
Yeah.
Well, I tell people when it's flowing, keep going and like cancel your appointments, keep going. But as soon as it gets hard, that may be a clue that you need to share it with someone, and don't keep going when it's hard. And so it's this interesting thing of where if you start doing this, where you go when you're flowing and take a break and share when you're not, it 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 shortens the troughs of inefficiency and increases the length of time you're surfing the wave of getting stuff done, and
Yeah.
it really works.
Yeah.
And but what I find is that people will stop too soon. Oh, I just did great, and then they leave, but in a roll. I'm like, no, keep going. Or they're like, oh, this is so hard, and they develop like writer's block, or they can't get it because they're constricting everything creatively inside them. So knowing when to pull back and being okay with it's not perfect, like I said, it really helps in doing that.
Oh, I think you should have a legion of author fans who need to hear this. I mean, there are many other jobs. I got a lot of salespeople listening and entrepreneurs.
Yep.
And believe me, we're not going to have the perfect sale. We're not going to have the perfect presentation. Isn't it funny, in terms of presentations and imperfections? I always try and remind people that might be the finest part of your presentation, the part that you felt was the most
Yeah,
imperfect, because to
it
the
really is.
audience, it felt authentic.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, we have a lot in common.
Oh yeah,
It-
I'll mess them up just to make sure the audience is still paying attention. How's the Magic of Imperfection doing?
well, it just was released on the 9th of this month, so it's hot
Okay,
off the presses. So I'm actually anxiously awaiting, when I'll have the first month of sales, and
good,
hope, I'm not author of Harry Potter here, so
right,
it's
right.
but
I know we're not writing Grisham novels here,
no, no.
but here, take a sip of tea. Now, hear this. Podcast Nation. Let's get a look at that Magic of Imperfection on Amazon, and let's go grab ourselves a copy. Ebook, I'm assuming we got an ebook, we got a regular book. We have an audio book yet?
Yeah, there's an audiobook available
Outstanding.
from audible.com. It's available around the world,
Good,
I'm
good.
told. And yeah.
Who did the read?
Oh shoot, I should remember the actor's.
You don't need, you already told me. I was hoping it was you.
No, it wasn't me. It wasn't
Okay.
me. They,
All
they
right.
they probably wisely said there are people that do this for a living that are really good at it, and most authors suck at their own books. So I said,
Well, I don't
fine.
know. Maybe that whole imperfect, you know, piece that you're working on. Well, I've got the imperfect voice. Put me up there.
That's true.
All
I should
right.
have.
So we got an audio, we got an ebook, we got a paperback. Let's grab a copy of that. And please, please, please remember the Magic of Imperfection, any book that you read, excuse me. Make sure you write a review on that. That's really important. It means something to the Amazon algorithms, and it means a heck of a lot to the authors. So let's grab a copy of that, make sure that we're reading it and writing about it. Give me one small practical shift that a listener can make today to stop overthinking and start finishing what really matters to them. A big question for you.
Well, it's almost paralyzing because I have lots of little things that I want people
I'll
to
take
do.
a couple little ones. That's okay.
Well, again, what I really hope people do is learn to accept that their work will get better by letting go. And whatever you're working on right now, whether it's again a manuscript or a business plan, or some invention, getting feedback from people that you trust, your coworkers or people as early as possible is fundamental to making it as good as possible, and to get that information as early as you possibly can so that you're not spending time going down the wrong track. Value your time. So that's one piece of advice. So
Oh, it's a great piece of advice, particularly from a person who's writing about imperfection. And I'm so glad you did that, Jason. I mean that. I think it's a topic that we don't talk about enough. From my angle, it didn't come to me, this topic, from a business scenario. I actually volunteer and help people who are in career transition. And I'm usually working with older clients and people who've been beaten up a little bit, and they walk with limps. Sometimes their limp in their mind is just their age and the ageism that they're up against. And so to me, that imperfection concept really transfers to so many different people who struggle with that imperfection. And I wish they'd realize, particularly for job seekers, please remember that a lot of times the person on the other side of the table there, if they're hung up on your imperfection, you don't want to work there. Usually they're not. What they're watching is, are you hung up on that imperfection? Is this something that you can't stop talking about? Because if you can't get out of your own way on your imperfection, that does affect the guy on the other side.
absolutely, absolutely. And this is a skill set you can apply to running teams and so on. So yeah.
It's important. It's a really important topic. How do people get a hold of you?
Well, you can find me and my work, my primary work, on perkinsandwill.com, which is the architecture firm that I'm part of, and we do work all over the planet. And certainly if people Google me, they can find all sorts of things I'm involved with. And then clearly the book is available on Amazon and fine booksellers near you.
There you go. And how about LinkedIn? You want some LinkedIn reach outs there?
Yeah, I made all the social media, my team monitors them. People can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn for sure.
Okay. And we'll have all your information up here as well. But if you're looking for him, it's Jason McLennan. Jason, I think you all can work with, but McLennan, McLennan. I got that right?
Got that right.
That's what makes me a good host. Okay, good. Listen, I appreciate the conversation. I didn't know we were Barrett Kohler brothers, so that's another star for this particular episode. And I wish you nothing but success with this book, because there's certain books that are really sweet and nice, but this is important from many different angles. And so I want this book to really do well. I wish you a ton of luck.
Thank you.
You bet. You
Take
bet.
care.
All right, my man. We'll do it again as well as we can next time, everybody. Until then, stay safe.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate and recommend it on iTunes, Outcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information on this show and Rob at jollis.com.